أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما نافعا اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه Rabbi şrah li sadri ve yessir li emri ve ahlul uqdeten min lisani yefkahu kavli. Assalamu alaikum ve rahmetullahi ve barakatuh. Welcome to the Reflections on the Risale-i Nur by Bediuzzaman Said Nursi podcast series. This is Mustafa Tuna. You can listen to the episodes of this series wherever you listen to your podcasts or at the website www.reflections-rn.org. Please go ahead and subscribe so that you can listen to our episodes when they come out on a regular basis, inshallah. A rough translation of the text we will be reflecting upon in this episode is also posted at this website. You can go to the podcasts and then words and then the 13th word. And as that also implies, we are continuing with the 13th word today, inshallah. The 13th word is a comparison, offers a comparison of the worldview perspective that the Quran provides to humankind and philosophies, worldviews that are not guided by revelation provide. And it establishes the superiority, utility, goodness of the Quranic perspective, looking at the world from the lenses, from the window of the Quran. The word has two sections. The first one was more theoretical, establishing this point, this position. And in the second section, Ustad Nursi placed lessons, teachings that he had offered later on in his life after that first section, because they provide a good example of seeing everything, seeing the world through a Quranic perspective. And this has many aspects to it. It has an aspect of one's relationship with God and reality and the nature, the world that we live in. It has an aspect about social relations, how we relate to other people. So the past two episodes we read about one aspect of this social field, social aspect of looking at the world through a Quranic window, through a Quranic perspective. First we talked about youth and what it means and how we can make the best out of it, and the reality of death and how we should be facing it. And then Ustad Nursi placed here several teachings that he had offered to prison inmates. That is because he has spent a lot of time in jail, not because he was sentenced to anything, but because he was detained and there were court cases opened against him, and they would open one case after the other. Even though he was acquitted from one, they would open the same case again. So he spent a lot of time in jail. He and his close students spent a lot of time in jail, and Ustad Nursi, being a man of mercy and compassion, wanting to help the people around him, he would look at the life that these prisoners were living and the circumstances that they had fallen into, and offer them a way out. Offer them a way out through the wisdom of the Quran. In this episode 2, inshallah, we will continue that. We will read another one of his teachings to prison inmates. So, Bismillah. Bismihi subhanahu wa in min shay'in illa yusabbihu bihamdihi. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu abadan da'iman. In his name, glory be to him, God. And there is nothing that does not glorify him with praise. And this, of course, this is a statement from Surah Al-Isra. I think it should be the verse 44 from the Quran. Peace and God's mercy and blessings be upon you continually to eternity. This is, of course, the introduction. Ey hapis arkadaşlarım ve din kardeşlerim, O my prison friends and brothers in religion, Size hem dünya azabından hem ahiret azabından kurtaracak bir hakikati beyan etmek kalbime ihtar edildi. O da şudur. Ustad Nursi is writing a letter to his students and other prison inmates that are in the prison. It might be because he was under solitary confinement and therefore he could not teach it himself. This was most likely at the Afyon prison, one of the last prison experience he had to go through. My heart was inspired to explain to you a reality. My heart was inspired to explain to you a reality that will save from both the torment of this world, and it's a torment for these people in prison, and the torment of the hereafter, and that is this. Now, as a side note, as a tangent, this phrase and phrases like this in Ustad Nursi's language have sometimes been the subject of criticism. My heart was inspired, and people say, so who are you that your heart is being inspired? Who are you that it is being inspired to you and not other people? Are you trying to say that you are receiving revelation, etc.? Of course, he doesn't say I received revelation. He's saying my heart was inspired, I received the revelation, or it came to my heart, or it was cast in my heart. Like, these are the kinds of expressions that he uses and that have been the subject of criticism, and it is the result of total misunderstanding, if not total ill will. Now, this is the thing. All thought come to us. We are not there as authors to appropriate things. Thoughts come to us from the angelic realm, from that connection that we have with angels, or directly from God. Sometimes it comes from Satan and satanic spirits. Sometimes it comes from our lower soul. That usually is not a elaborate thought, but a desire, right? But they all come. And what Ustad Nursi is doing here is acknowledging that he is not the property owner here. It is from God. And if there is good in this, it is from God. If it's a bad thought, it may be from the nafs, the lower soul, or from Satan, and that is the place to be attributed to. If it is a good thought, then the place to attribute it to is either, again, the angelic realm or ultimately God. So he is acknowledging his nothingness in saying this. He is speaking with modesty. He is preventing his lower soul from falling into pride. And that is why the language is. But because we have fallen so far away from this etiquette, right? Some people sometimes think that this is the opposite of what it is meant to be, right? So let's put that tangent aside, and if this comes up in the future too, let's try to prime our brains, our understanding, to understand what is meant as it is meant. My heart was inspired to explain to you a reality that will save from both the torment of this world and the torment of the hereafter. And that is this. Mesela birisi birinin kardeşini veya bir akrabasını öldürmüş. Bir dakika intikam lezzetiyle bir katl, milyonlar dakika hem kalbi sıkıntı hem hapis azabını çektirir ve maktulün akrabası dahi intikam endişesiyle ve karşısında düşmanını düşünmesiyle hayatının lezzetini ve ömrünün zevkini kaçırır. Hem korku hem hiddet azabını çekiyor. Bunun tek bir çaresi var. O da Kur'an'ın emrettiği ve hak ve hakikat ve maslahat ve insaniyet ve İslamiyet iktiza ve teşvik ettikleri olan barışmak ve musalaha etmektir. Say someone has murdered the brother or a relative of someone else. A murder committed for the pleasure of a minute of vengeance causes millions of minutes of distress in the heart and dooms one to suffer the torment of prison. Right? A murder is an act of a minute, perhaps a second, depends on how it's taking place. If it is, let's say, by shooting, right? Just pulling the trigger, perhaps a couple of seconds. A murder committed for the pleasure of a minute of vengeance. if it was for vengeance. And that's one of the more common cases, especially think of, again, 1940s rural Turkey. That would be like honor killings or disputes over soil, or you said this to me, I said that to you, your brother said this to me, and I'm going to take my revenge. I'm going to kill you. People would not thinking too far ahead, not thinking the big picture, right? Moving, acting with vengeance. A murder committed for the pleasure of a minute of vengeance causes millions of minutes of distress in the heart and dooms one to suffer the torment of prison. So the distress in the heart, because after the heat of the moment passes, that person will now recognize, what did I do? Perhaps we'll start thinking about the weight of the value of human life. Perhaps we'll start to think about facing his Lord in the hereafter. Perhaps we'll start to think about, now what will the other party do in this case? And if this person is caught, he is also in prison, suffering the torment of prison. So a minute of vengeance caused millions of minutes of distress in the heart and dooms one to suffer the torment of prison. And of course, Ustad Nursi is in a male prison, and the language here is about male prison inmates, etc. But this doesn't mean that women cannot suffer such things. And also, we need to think a bit more broadly when we read and think about these issues, these texts. It doesn't have to be prison only. We all commit crimes. We all, may God protect us from doing so, but we all do wrong things out of vengeance or out of other futile emotions and desires and drives. So it applies to other circumstances too. We just need to take it by degrees. And so that was the state of the murderer. And the relatives of the murdered person also lose the delight of their life and the pleasures of their time in this world. Because of the worry of vengeance, now they are filled. Now their hearts are, now Satan is pumping this vermin, this poison into their hearts. They are filled with this desire for vengeance and are worrying about, how do we do it, right? The delight of their life and the pleasures of their time in this world is gone because of the worry of vengeance and the thought of their enemies before them. Now they have enemies. Both sides are in a difficult place. One suffers from both fear and rage. The murdered person died. That person is not here anymore. But those who are left behind, look what happened to an entire community, family and relatives of both sides. And in the old times, this could also be tribes. They would have, and in some places of the world, they still have these tribal blood feuds. So an entire community is hurt and harmed, and their lives became like torment. So what's the solution? What is the solution? This has only one solution, Ustad Nursi says, and that is to make peace and reconcile as the Quran commands, and as it is what truth, reality, common good, humanity, and Islam necessitate and encourage. Now, is that easy? Ustad Nursi did not say this is really easy, but he said this is, right, the solution, and this is what truth, reality, common good, humanity, and Islam necessitate and encourage. Of course, Satan wants people to be at each other's throats. Of course, the lower compulsive souls will be burning with vengeance. Of course, all of this is true, but the intellect evaluates the situation by looking at the overall good, the big picture. That is why Said Nursi says this is what truth and reality necessitate and encourage. When you look at reality as reality is, when you look at the big picture, you see that even though your compulsive soul is now seeking the pleasure of vengeance, that's not good for yourself, your family, your community. That's not good for anybody. Right now, what is really troubling everybody, what the problem is the state of enmity and animosity. That is the problem that we need to clear out of the picture, right? That is the point of even punishment, right? The point of punishment is not vengeance. The point of punishment, when meted out, right? When administered by the government, by this position of wisdom and controlled power, right? Its point is to clear vengeance and justice. But ultimately, justice is going to be served in the big court, in the great court, in the hereafter, right? In this world, the point is both justice and also to clear enmity, to clear people's consciousness, to facilitate a return to a peaceful life among people. That's why the Quran commands, and truth, reality, common good, the good for all, right? Humanity, being a humanness, true humanness, right? And Islam necessitate and encourage. Let's try to achieve that. Let's look for the means of achieving that. And where is it? How do we do it? Through making peace and reconciling. Through peace and reconciliation. Evet, hakikat ve maslahat sulhtur. Yes, reality and common good is in peace. And again, when we say reality here, it may sound confusing, but the benefit when you see everything in the big picture and common good for all is in peace. Reality as reality is. When you see reality as reality is, then you see that the thing to do here, the true right path, the beneficial path, the preferable path to follow is in peace. Çünkü ecel birdir değişmez. Why? Said Nursi is going to explain this further. Çünkü ecel birdir değişmez. O maktul herhalde ecel geldiğinden daha ziyade kalmayacaktı. O katil ise o kazayı ilahiyeye vasıta olmuş. Eğer barışmak olmazsa iki tarafta daima korku ve intikam azabını çekerler. Because the appointed time is fixed and does not change. Because his appointed time had arrived, that murdered person was not going to live any longer under any circumstances. As for that murderer, he has become the means for the realization of that divine decree. Now, this might sound somewhat alarming for some out there. Does this, after all, imply that the murderer has no responsibility? Is there no accountability for the murderer? Let's read it again. This is because the appointed time is fixed and does not change. What is because? Like the reality and common good is in peace. The thing to do in a situation like this is to make peace and reconcile. Why? Because the appointed time is fixed and does not change. Because his appointed time had arrived, that murdered person was not going to live any longer under any circumstances. As for that murderer, he has become the means for the realization of that divine decree. So he was just the means, therefore he is not accountable, or he is the means and we are not making any comment, any statement about his accountability. It is the second way, right? This is a matter of addressing the addressee as what is appropriate to address in the given circumstance. You don't tell a person who is like burning with rage and vengeance, yes, that person caused this, he is responsible. He has to be taken into account for what he is responsible. He will be taken into account. His accountability is established already. God will hold him accountable. The point of discussion here is, how do we establish peace in society? How do we establish the well-being of those who are left and still living in this life? How do we make this a better world for them, or how do we prevent it from devolving into a horrible world of torment for those who are left behind? How do we ensure societal peace? That is the discussion, right? That person has responsibility, but put that aside. Ultimately, right? And while that person is accountable what he did, right? Ultimately, it is God's will, it is God's decree that is being realized. This person happened to be the means of that realization of God's divine decree. If it were not for him, God could choose some other means for the realization of that decree, right? خَيْرِهِ وَشَرِّهِ مِنَ اللَّهِ تَعَالَى. All good and all bad, all evil, right, come from God. Now, does God create evil? That's a totally different discussion and a long one. We are not going to go into it. And the 26th word, we are in the 13th word now, right? It is add another 13 words. The 26th word is entirely devoted to this discussion and related discussions, and it's an excellent treatise, mashallah. It explains and clarifies the problem in a very short space, in a very lucid way. And this is an issue that has been the cause of much controversy among Muslims, starting from right after the Prophet's death, sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But it is when we see reality as reality is, when we see the big picture, we understand that it is actually not that controversial. It is not that difficult. It is easy, but it needs to be understood with careful attention and discussion, and we do not have the time to do that here. All we need to say is, this does not mean that that person, that murderer, is not going to be held accountable. That murderer is going to be held accountable, and that's why later on Said Nursi will say that person should repent. God may forgive him. God may not forgive him. If God forgives him, God will still recompense the murdered person, right? Justice will be established one way or another. God is absolutely just, and he will establish justice, and there are many wisdoms in what he decrees to happen in this world. Things that appear to be unfair to us on the face of it in this world, as they appear in this world, right? When seen in the big picture, when seen in this grand reality, fall in place, and we see that justice is established. Now, we also talked about this in some detail in the 10th word. So this person is accountable, but that person is accountable does not change the fact that what that person did, or the consequence of what that person did, the outcome of what that person did, right, is not God's divine decree. No, it is God's divine decree. And by reconciling, by choosing the path of peace, one is submitting to God's divine decree. One does not have to do it. God in the Sharia has given the survivors of the surviving family, close ones, of beloved ones of this murdered person, the right to ask for compensation, the right to ask for the punishment of the person, and etc., right? But that does not mean that they should do it. If they forgive, that's better. That's better for the society. That's better for them. God will pay back their generosity with generosity in the hereafter. It should be better for the murdered person. Again, God will recompense that person in the hereafter, compensate for him, for what that person lost in this world, what that person suffered, right? It will all be brought to justice, and things will be evened out. So don't worry about it. But if you forgive, that is again better for the society and better for you. If you forgive, you now receive the blessing and reward of establishing peace in society too, right? You don't only receive the quenching of your thirst for vengeance, you receive actual rewards. It is not a temporal and temporary pleasure anymore. It is a lasting reward that you achieve. This is because the appointed time is fixed and does not change. That person died not because the murderer shot a gun. That person died because God decreed that person to die at this time. That person died with a bullet because God decreed that that person would die simultaneously with the entry of a bullet in his body. God created the bullet and God created death. God could have chosen a different means could have chosen a different means that would appear as the cause of that person's death. But ultimately, when we look at the reality of things, the inner dimension of things, the cause of the death of that person and the death of everybody else in the world is that God decreed so. Because his appointed time had arrived, that murdered person was not going to live any longer under any circumstances. Now, if you think about this as the surviving family member of relative of that murdered person, it's going to start to warm your heart up, or cool it down rather. It will start to cool your heart down and help you come to terms with what happened, if you are a believer, of course. If you're a believer. As for that murderer, he has become the means for the realization of that divine decree. Again, this doesn't mean that he does not have responsibility for it. He made a choice. He is accountable for his choice. But he is not the cause. Being the means and being the cause, although we sometimes use these interchangeably because of the laxity of language, the looseness of language, right? They are different things. The cause is the causer of all causes, or rather the cause is the causer of all means. So if you put that murderer aside and see reality as reality is, see this murderer as just the means, that murderer becomes insignificant. You start to float above reality in a sense, in the spiritual state, in this metaphysical spiritual state where you start to see reality and the actual cause, which is your Lord. And of course, you are not going to claim anything against your Lord. You know that he is just and merciful, and whatever he decreed is the best. There is nothing that could have been in this world that would be better than what is. This world is the best. Reality is beautiful, and he is the one who gave life. He is the one who gave death. He is the one who gave life. He is the one who is taking it. It is his. He is taking his property back, and you are his property too. And this is not the end of it. Yes, he gave you this love and attachment, and it hurts, but he is also promising that if you behave in the right way, if you believe and do good deeds, and reconciliation is a good deed, if you believe and do good deeds, he is going to give you permanent pleasure in the paradise, in his garden, and that is a way for you to reach, if that is your concern, to your murdered beloved too. As for that murderer, he has become the means for the realization of that divine decree. So see the situation, see the picture in this way because it is reality. Eğer barışmak olmazsa iki taraf da daima korku ve intikam azabını çekerler. Onun içindir ki 3 günden fazla bir mümin diğer bir mümine küsmemek İslamiyet emrediyor. In the absence of reconciliation, both parties will continually suffer from fear and vengeance. This is why Islam commands that a believer should not forsake another believer for more than 3 days. That is based on a hadith, of course, a prophetic tradition. Eğer o katl bir adavetten, bir kinli garazdan gelmemişse ve bir münafık o fitneye vesile olmuş ise çabuk barışmak elzemdir. Yoksa o cüz'i musibet büyük olur, devam eder. Now, this advice was about a case in which we assumed, or Ustad Nursi assumed, that the murderer had committed what he committed out of vengeance or enmity, and perhaps there was some real ground for that vengeance or enmity, but that does not always have to be the case. So, if that murder is not the outcome of an enmity or a vengeful grudge, but a hypocrite has caused it, then making peace is absolutely necessary. So there are sometimes cases in which a evil person who has some kind of grudge, some ulterior purpose, intervenes and plots and causes people to hate one another, perhaps set somebody up, egg somebody on. So if there is a situation like this in which the murderer was, in a sense, snared into a trap and did commit the murder, but was deceived, right? In a case like that, Ustad Nursi says, making peace is absolutely necessary, even more necessary than the other case. Otherwise, that small and particular calamity grows and continues, because there is wrongdoing in society now. There is fitna, there is a kind of trial, there is a plot that started out and is unfolding, right? Those who wanted to seed enmity in society seem to be successful now. You cannot let them take their way and move on. You cannot let their plot to materialize, right? Otherwise, that small and particular calamity grows and continues. If they make peace, that is the two parties who are involved, if they make peace, if the murderer repents and prays for the murdered person at all times, right? After all, the murderer also noticed that he was not actually justified, never justified, but he was not actually acting with complete information. He was deceived. He was wronged, right? Now he repents, and at least the one thing that he can do for the deceased person is that he prays for the murdered person at all times. In that case, both parties gain a lot. Not only, so there's reconciliation, right? The murderer repents and the murdered person is praying for the murdered person. Now, if there is reconciliation, if the other party is not seeking vengeance any longer, it is not only the murdered who is gaining. In that case, both parties gain a lot and become like brothers. They were deceived, they were put in a situation where they became enemies, but they were both wronged, and they share a common fate in that they are both wronged. They can now build on that shared calamity, right, and become like brothers. They forgive their enemies, submitting to divine decree and determination. Again, in a situation like this, you think that this is divine decree and determination. If you did something wrong, you take full responsibility and say, this happened because of my participation in that, and I have full accountability in it, that I am the means not the ultimate cause does not change my accountability, right? But if you are looking at it from outside, you are not the party who is on the side of oppression, who undertook the wrongdoing, right? Then you say, this is divine decree and determination. Let's submit to it. Let's see what our Lord does, and He does good. Whatever He does beautifully. Yoksa o cüz'i musibet büyük olur, devam eder. Eğer barışsalar ve öldüren tövbe etse ve maktule her vakit dua etse, o halde her iki taraf çok kazanırlar ve kardeş gibi olurlar. Bir gitmiş kardeşe bedel, birkaç dindar kardeşleri kazanır. Kaza ve kader-i ilahiye teslim olup düşmanını affeder ve bilhassa madem Risale-i Nur dersini dinlemişler, elbette mabeyinlerinde bulunan bütün küsmekleri bırakmaya hem maslahat ve istirahat-ı şahsiye ve umumiye hem nur dairesindeki uhuvvet iktiza eder. Again, if they make peace, if the murderer repents and prays for the murdered person at all times, in that case, both parties gain a lot and become like brothers. In the place of one brother that is lost, they acquire a few pious brothers. They forgive their enemies, submitting to divine decree and determination. And especially, since they have listened to the lessons of the Risale-i Nur. Here Ustad Nursi is, of course, focusing on in the prison where he is giving this advice. And mashallah, when he was put in the prison, his students come with him and they start teaching these prison inmates who in many cases are ignorant, uneducated, etc. But Ustad Nursi's students, mashallah, have matured to a place where they can become teachers for others, even though they are mostly of peasant origin. Perhaps they have elementary education, perhaps not, but they have listened to their lessons. They have heard their lessons from Ustad Nursi for a long time. So now they are disseminating that lesson, giving that lesson to the prison inmates too. And that's how we should be too. One of the signs of true knowledge is that when you have it and you have internalized it, it just comes out. You cannot not disseminate it. You cannot not share it, right? They are sharing it with the prison inmates, and Ustad Nursi is saying, and especially since they, right, those people who have enmities among them, have listened to the lessons of the Risale-i Nur now, of course, common good, personal and general well-being, and the brotherhood in the circle of the light, and light here refers to the Risale-i Nur. Right? So those who listen to the Risale-i Nur, who read the Risale-i Nur, who receive their lessons from the Risale-i Nur, form a circle of brotherhood or sisterhood, right? And that brotherhood and sisterhood, in addition to common good and personal and general well-being, entails putting aside the animosity that exists between them. They should put that aside. Now they should become true brothers and sisters in religion. Nasıl ki Denizli hapsinde birbirine düşman bütün mahpuslar nurlar dersiyle birbirlerine kardeş oldular ve bizim beraatimize bir sebep olup hatta dinsizlere, serserilere de o mahpuslar hakkında maşallah, barekallah dedirttiler ve o mahpuslar tam teneffüs ettiler. Ben burada gördüm ki bir tek adamın yüzünden 100 adam sıkıntı çekip beraber teneffüse çıkmıyorlar. Onlara zulüm olur. Mert ve vicdanlı bir mümin, küçük ve cüz'i bir hata veya menfaatle yüzer zararı ehli imana vermez. Eğer hata etse verse, çabuk tövbe etmek lazımdır. As all the inmates who were enemies with one another at the Denizli prison became each other's brothers with the lessons of the lights. So this is the previous experience that Ustad Nursi and his students have had in a previous occasion of imprisonment in the city of Denizli, right? They start teaching those inmates, and everybody, maybe not everybody, but most inmates, almost all inmates in the prison become students of the Risale-i Nur and calm down, and like those murderers who have, I don't know, killed how many people and now are in the prison, they cannot kill bed bugs. They feel compunction. Their conscience that has now been kindled, awakened, does not let them kill bed bugs. as all the inmates who were enemies with one another at the Denizli prison became each other's brothers with the lessons of the lights, as they became a cause for our acquittal. So this was one of the things that was mentioned in the court trials. These are really good people. They caused the prison inmates to become responsible, merciful, compassionate human beings, and also at a larger scale in the realm of divine determination, right? That is one of the causes of their acquittal, and even caused the irreligious people and the vagabonds say, MashaAllah, Barakallah, and may God bless them, about those inmates. And as those inmates took a sigh of relief, because they were fighting with each other, there was enmity, animosity, tension among them. Now that that's gone, they all take a sigh of relief. I noticed here, now this is the Afyon prison, another prison in another city. I noticed here that 100 men are distressed and avoid going out to the yard for recreation because of one man. One man has some kind of enmity, animosity against the others, and perhaps they ganged up against each other. This is oppression for them, for everybody. A manly believer with good conscience does not cause hundreds of harms to the believers, people of belief, for a small and particular mistake or benefit. Right? What's the benefit that's going to come out of attacking one person out there in the yard during recreation time? What's the benefit? You are going to fulfill your inner satisfaction. You are going to satisfy your lower soul. You are going to quench your thirst for vengeance or whatever. But that's a particular thing that belongs to an individual. It's a small thing on the scale of things, and it is hurting and giving harm to hundreds of believers in this prison. Now Ustad Nur says, a manly believer. And of course these prisoners usually are like manly people, brave people who can say, okay, this is my cause, and in the way of my cause, I'm not going to hold anything off. I can even kill. I can face death. I can face 30 years in prison. I can face execution. I can face life in prison. They are manly, but their manliness is put in the wrong place. And Ustad Nursi is saying, look, if you want to be manly, a manly believer with good conscience does not cause hundreds of harms to the believers for a small and particular mistake or benefit. He turns that manliness against his lower compulsive soul and against the Satan and struggles with them and overcomes them, and turns to his brothers and says, oh, I've overcome this thirst for vengeance that was in me. I've overcome this anger that was in me. And now we can all take a breath. If one makes a mistake and does cause that, which is happening, right? Does cause harms to believers, hundreds of harms to believers, it behooves him to repent immediately. It behooves him to repent immediately. Now there is another small advice in the same vein. Bismihi subhanahu wa im min shay'in illa yusabbihu bihamdihi. In his name, glory be to him, and there is nothing that does not glorify him with praise. Aziz yeni kardeşlerim ve eski mahpuslar. My dear new brothers and long-time prisoners. Again, they came into the prison, Ustad Nursi and his students, and now these are their new brothers. These are believers in the prison. Therefore, regardless of what they did, they may be thugs, they may be murderers, they may be thieves, they may be embezzlers, they may be whatever, right? They are believers. Therefore, they are brothers, right? And they have been there for a long time. Many of them have been there for a long time. The Ustad Nursi is coming into the prison. My dear new brothers and long-time prisoners. Benim kat'i kanaatim gelmiş ki buraya girmemizin inayet-i ilahiye cihetinde bir ehemmiyetli sebebi sizsiniz. Yani nurlar tesellileriyle ve imanın hakikatlarıyla sizi bu hapis musibetinin sıkıntılarından ve dünyevi çok zararlarından ve boşu boşuna gam ve hüzün ile giden hayatınızı faydasızlıktan, bad-ı heva zayi olmasından ve dünyanızın ağlaması gibi ahiretinizi ağlamaktan kurtarıp tam bir teselli size vermektir. Madem hakikat budur, elbette siz dahi denizli mahpusları ve nur talebeleri gibi birbirinize kardeş olmanız lazımdır. Görüyorsunuz ki bir bıçak içinize girmemek ve birbirinize tecavüz etmemek için dışarıdan gelen bütün eşyanız ve yemek ve ekmeğinizi ve çorbanızı karıştırıyorlar. Size sadakatle hizmet eden gardiyanlar çok zahmet çekiyorlar. Hem siz beraber teneffüse çıkmıyorsunuz. Güya canavar ve vahşi gibi birbirinize saldıracaksınız. İşte şimdi sizin gibi fıtri kahramanlık damarını taşıyan yeni arkadaşlar bu zamanda manevi büyük bir kahramanlık ile heyet edeyiniz ki değil elimize bıçak, belki mavzer ve revolverler de verilse, hem emir de verilse, biz bu biçare ve bizim gibi musibetzede arkadaşlarımıza dokunmayacağız. Eskiden 100 düşmanlık ve adavetimiz dahi olsa da onları helal edip hatırlarını kırmamaya çalışacağımıza, Kur'an'ın ve imanın ve uhuvvet-i İslamiye'nin ve maslahatımızın emriyle ve irşadıyla karar verdik diyerek bu hapsi bir mübarek dershaneye çeviriniz. I am definitely convinced that from the point of view of divine solicitude, one of the causes of our entry into this place is you, the prisoners. Why? From the point of view of divine solicitude. On the face of it, they are accused by, spreading tariqah in the country, perhaps attempting to change the political system, doing this or that. There are all sorts of charges that are being ramped up against them. But that is what's happening in the apparent world, Ustad Nursi is saying. In the background, in the big picture, there's a reason for their entry into this prison, and that is God has, out of His divine solicitude, sent assistance, solicitude to these prisoners. One of the causes of our entry into this place is you. That is, for the lights to save you with their consolations and the truth of faith from the distresses of this calamity of imprisonment and many worldly harms. Your life that is moving away futilely in woes and sorrows, from uselessness and being wasted for nothing, and your hereafter from crying in the way that your world is crying, and thus to give you a complete consolation. So the lights, the Risale-i Nur, Ustad Nursi and his students, but through them, the Risale-i Nur, these teachings of the Qur'an, right, have come to the prison to save you with their consolations and the truth of faith. One, from the distresses of this calamity of imprisonment and many worldly harms. Two, your life that is moving away futilely in woes and sorrows, from uselessness and being wasted for nothing. And three, your hereafter from crying in the way that your world is crying, and thus to give you a complete consolation. Since this is the reality, i.e. in the bigger picture, as when we look at reality as reality is, beyond the small box that we are boxed in and see that big grand reality, since this is what appears to be the case there, of course you too should become brothers with one another like the Denizli inmates and the students of the light. God has sent assistance to you, you need to receive it and make good use of it, like the inmates at the Denizli prison had done before. You see that they feel through all of your belongings coming from outside, as well as your food, bread, and soup, in order for a knife not to make its way to you and for you not to attack one another. So these prisoners, again, they have ganged up against each other. There is tension, and the prison guards have to make sure that nothing that can be used as a weapon can reach them. The prison guards who are serving you faithfully are going through a lot of trouble. Moreover, You are not going out to the yard for recreation together. Again, the same problem that Ustad Nursi mentioned before. There is this enmity, there is this tension going on, therefore they cannot go out to the yard. If they do, they know that there will be trouble. As if you will be attacking each other like wild beasts. So now, new friends who carry the temperament of bravery or heroism in their innate nature, tell the administration with what would be a great metaphysical heroism at this time. Forget a knife. Even if a Mauser rifle or revolver is given to us, and furthermore, even if we are commanded to do so, we will not hurt these helpless friends of ours who are calamity-stricken like us. We decided upon the command and guidance of the Qur'an, of faith, of brotherhood in Islam, and of our common good, that even if we had 100 enmities and animosities in the past, we will forgive those and try not to offend them, and thus turn this prison into a blessed place of study. Right? So, Ustad Nursi again recognizes what is in the nature of these men who have ended up in prison, and elsewhere he talks about this. He says, you cannot change man's nature. It is imprinted, right? The word for nature in Arabic or Turkish is tabi'ah, which comes from printing, taba, to impress. It is impressed on them. It is permanently there. You cannot change it, but you can make good use of it. You can channel it in a direction where it will be useful as opposed to harmful. Right? These men are heroic. They want, as we talked before, like they are manly, heroic, brave. They are willing to face difficulty and take challenges, and they are willing to go through punishment and execution and imprisonment, whatever, for a cause that or for a desire that they find to be achievable and should be achieved. Right? Ustad says, use that heroism. Now use that heroism to achieve this good. And this is good. This is not a vain desire. This is not a temporal, worldly thirst to be quenched. Right? This is something that is really good. And it is something that's going to bring good and peace and comfort and well-being both to the community that you are living in. It happens to be the prison community now, and that might have repercussions outside the prison too, right? And it's going to earn eternal rewards for you. So do it. Do it. Show your manliness. Show your heroism. Show the good that's in you. And although, inshallah, may nobody who is listening to this be in prison, and if they are, may God help them out and make it easy for them. But this does not have to be about being imprisoned alone. We all face our compulsive souls, lowly souls, its vain desires. Sometimes those desires are about individual petty pleasures. Sometimes they concern other people, right? But we all need to rise above that and see the big picture and be willing to reconcile, be willing to move in the direction of the good, and be eager to use the bravery, the heroism, the strength that we have in ourselves in order to achieve common good, in order to achieve God's pleasure, and convert our difficulties into eternal rewards that are going to bloom like garden beds, like flower beds in the paradise, inshallah. Okay, so this section is also over, and inshallah in the next episode we will continue the same line of discussion, looking at the implications of seeing the world from a Quranic perspective. And in this one, inshallah, it will be about what humanity is facing even at a broader scale, and that is a piece Ustad Nursi, an advice Ustad Nursi had written during and after World War II. So till then, inshallah, stay safe, and if you think that this is of use to you, if this is benefiting you, and if you think that it can benefit other people too, don't hold on to it and share. سبحانك لا علم لنا إلا ما علمتنا إنك أنت العليم الحكيم وآخر دعواهم الحمد لله رب العالمين. الفاتحة.